call this City Council meeting to order. If you're able, please rise for our national anthem.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command, car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
At this time, I'll call on Councillor Elliott for our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor. Niagara Region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Haudenosaunee, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The City of Port Colborne stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live.
Thank you, Councillor. At this time, if we could move the agenda, and we have the following additions under the delegation section. We have a written delegation submission on the development charges bylaw for the Niagara Home Builders Association, which is now item 8.1. And we have a delegation from Melissa Bigford on recommendation report for proposed zoning bylaw amendment at 281 Chippewa Road 2024-192, which is now item 8.2. If I could have Councillors Danch and Hoyle move the council agenda dated October 22nd, 2024 be confirmed as amended. Questions? All in favor? It's carried. Disclosures of interest. I have one so far this evening under items 5.1 and 5.2. Councillor Beauregard, development charges bylaw 2024-191, and the actual bylaw itself. Eric Beauregard declares a conflict of interest as his employer has provided comments on this item. Are there any other disclosures? Seeing none. Proclamations. Royal Canadian Legion Poppy Week campaign, October 26th through November 11th, 2024. If I could have Councillors Bodner and Ellett move that I, Mayor William C. Steele, do hereby proclaim October 26th, 2024 to November 11th, 2024 as Poppy Week in the City of Port Colborne, in honor of the men and women from Port Colborne who gave their lives during the two world wars, the Korean War and the Afghanistan War. All in favor? That's carried. We have one presentation this evening. We have Lori Watson, Director of Niagara Region Community Services, for the Niagara Region Poverty Reduction Strategy presentation. If you want to come forward, welcome. Just press the red button on the speaker right in front of you.
I think we're set. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Lori Watson, and I am the Director of Social Assistance and the Niagara Poverty Reduction Strategy with the Niagara Region. With me today is Mark Todd, the manager of the strategy, as well as Lisa Gallant, the strategy advisor. The purpose of tonight's presentation is to provide an overview of the community-led Niagara Poverty Reduction Strategy, with the goal of enhancing partnership and creating new connections in Port Colborne to address poverty. The overview will include the why and how the strategy was created, the vision, the 8 recommendations and key actions. Communicating the strategy is a key component of implementation. In April, the strategy was presented to the Port Colborne Social Determinants of Health Committee. An action step from that meeting was to present to you today. I'd like to thank that committee for inviting us. And lastly, I would like to discuss how the Niagara Prosperity Initiative grant aligns with the strategy. The reason we need a strategy is clear. 10.4% of Niagara's population, or 50,000 people, live in poverty in Niagara. Poverty is often defined as not having enough money to meet basic needs like food, shelter, and clothing. But it is much more than just not having enough money. It is a human rights issue. It is about social isolation, limited access to education, and includes people working and still not being able to make ends meet. The issue is complex with no singular solution. A strategy provides a framework for a long-term planning to achieve the goal of ending poverty. This slide captures additional data points specific to Port Colborne. The data comes from the recently launched Niagara Wellbeing Interactive Tool that provides data for all 12 municipalities and 44 neighborhoods. It provides demographics, education, employment, housing, and income information. As noted, 11% of people in Port Colborne between the ages of 18 and 64 live in poverty, slightly higher than Niagara and Ontario. You can find the tool on the Niagara Region website, and the data can be leveraged to inform strategies or initiatives that you might have ongoing. In 2021, staff received direction from Regional Council to move forward with creating this strategy. A steering committee was created to guide the work. It is comprised of people with lived expertise, Indigenous leaders, community leaders whose work aligns with poverty reduction, including Tara-Lee McLean from Bridges Community Health Centre, a CAO from St. Catharines, or the CAO from St. Catharines, and 2 regional councillors. Over 1,000 residents provided input. Community Cares hosted a community conversation with over 60 people with lived expertise to help to inform this strategy. There was input from the Situation Table in Port Colborne, and Bridges Community Health Centre participated in the large community forum. Staff then reviewed the recommendations with best practice, and over 100 contact experts helped to contribute to the creation of the recommendations. The steering committee then prioritized the recommendations based on impact, effort, and community support. A key part of the development was understanding current regional initiatives that align with poverty reduction as part of creating a higher level of awareness and greater focus on activities that will achieve community-driven collective results. Local area municipalities, of course, have investments that contribute to poverty reduction. For example, community designs that reduce isolation or subsidized recreational programs for children. And it is important that the strategy captures that great work as well. The Port Colborne Social Determinants of Health Committee, your affordable housing strategy, your work in transit, economic development, and transition to employment are some of the great examples of the work that you're doing that intersects with this strategy itself. The strategy has a clear vision, working together to prevent and end poverty and increase well-being in Niagara. It is intended to be a long-term framework that provides 8 recommendations and over 30 corresponding actions. A copy of the full report is available on the Niagara Region's website, and we've also left some copies at the back for those that are interested as well. However, tonight I'm going to provide just a few key highlights. The 8 recommendations might seem obvious to you, in particular for those of you that work or volunteer in the human services sector. However, we think that's positive, as it makes it easy then to leverage this framework when working together to close the gaps and address the issues of poverty across sectors and across communities. The first recommendation focuses on Indigenous well-being. Over 200 Indigenous peoples gave input about Indigenous prosperity. The recommendation speaks to developing an Indigenous-led strategy that's driven by Indigenous community process, and that's really the key. Next is housing, with a focus on reducing evictions and expanding supports for people who have previously been homeless. The area of income focuses on the importance of a living wage in Niagara and the need to advocate for an increase in social assistance rates. And employment speaks to increasing vocational training opportunities for people that are living in poverty so they can secure decent, stable work. Improving access to fresh food in priority neighborhoods is also a key action, and focusing on early childhood development is critical to ending the cycle of poverty. The implementation of the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare $10 a day is a key step towards improving access to affordable childcare. Transportation. Affordable and equitable access to transportation is a priority with a focus on how to implement a low-income bus pass. And finally, addressing gaps and streamlining local mental health and addiction services is a key area of focus as well. The strategy outlines how to create change through common principles, which include ensuring the work is grounded in the voice of people with lived expertise, being inclusive and supporting diversity, and that an equity lens is used when moving the actions forward, understanding that stigma is a barrier that must be addressed, and advocacy creates change. So the goal is to decrease the number of people who live in poverty, who work but are still in poverty, experience homelessness, live in food insecure households, and experience financial concerns even when they are working. These measures are captured in many of the initiatives mentioned earlier and many of the work that's already happening here in Port Colborne, either by the city or community organizations within Port Colborne. Creating and tracking progress against the poverty reduction strategy is essential in capturing the collective impact of all of that work that's happening across Niagara. In doing so, it will increase our local capacity to implement community work, align policies and procedures to best practice, and build public support to end poverty. One Niagara Region program that has a direct goal to reduce poverty is the Niagara Prosperity Initiative, better known as NPI. Since 2008, Regional Council has approved $1.5 million annually to fund local projects. This funding has resulted in over 90 organizations and 400 projects over that time period, impacting over 100,000 families across Niagara. The 2025-2027 grant for NPI is now open, and they are targeted investments to help implement the recommendations outlined in the Niagara Poverty Reduction Strategy. Communicating a strategy increases the chance of achieving results. We have presented the strategy to the Community and Safety and Wellbeing Advisory Committee, the Niagara Poverty Reduction Network, the Overdose Prevention and Education Network of Niagara, and the Transit Committee, just to name a few. We will continue to share the strategy and work with invested parties to identify their role in helping to end poverty using a collective impact approach. Please reach out to us if you'd like to get involved in moving the actions forward, aligning existing work, exploring new ideas, measuring collective impact to reduce the number of people in poverty in the city of Port Colborne. Niagara recognized a need for a community-wide response to end poverty. The strategy provides a major step to achieving this goal. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thanks, Laurie. Another good presentation. We appreciate that. Are there any questions to the presenter this evening, Council? Councillor Aquilina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the presenter. The grant that you were talking about, who is the grant like geared for? Like, what are the target, like what's the grant going to do? Like, is it for businesses to apply for or individuals?
Yep. Great question. Through you, Mayor. The grant is designed to respond to the recommendations outlined in the strategy, and the key organizations that would apply are not-for-profit organizations that would be applying for grants and looking to support work in the community to advance the recommendations forward, and so that would be the alignment to that.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Lord. Great presentation. I'm interested in one of the things here, not so much from, it doesn't make the story any better, because certainly we've got a serious problem here, so I don't want it to be confused with that. Mm-hmm. Your statistics, mm-hmm. And so, like, how current are they?
Mm. Through you. Thank you for that question. So, interesting. So the stats are actually from 2021 because they are Stats Canada data. But the interesting piece about the currency of the data is if we go back to 2026, actually the percentage of the population in poverty in 2026 was actually over 14%.
2016?
2016, sorry, in the Niagara region. And when we think about what happened over COVID, when there was an increase in government benefits, it actually resulted in a bit of a decline in the number of people accessing government supports. And it changed the number of people living in poverty. As the Director of Social Assistance, I can tell you based on our current caseload of social assistance, which is one indicator of the depth of poverty in the Niagara region, our caseload is close to 13,000 cases in the Niagara region, or well over 20,000 people in the Niagara region, just on social assistance. So we know that increase in the number of people relying on social assistance has a direct correlation to the number of people living in poverty. So back to your question, we believe actually the number is quite higher than what those stats indicate.
I guess I'm glad you pointed that out, because we've had different groups, some in economic development who are telling a different story. And I've always been amazed over the year. There's sort of like in Port Colborne, there's the street talk about it's a seniors community and 50% of the people are over 65. It's interesting, your median age is 50. And if you look at some of the recent stuff with new people moving in, it's actually lowering. And again, not to disparage the seriousness of the problem, but it's interesting how when we're sort of not playing on a real-time playing field, how distorted to the good or to the bad, either way, distortion is not a good thing, because it either gives us a false sense of hope and that we're doing much better, or it takes you down the other way. So I don't know if there's any initiatives that will somehow get a tighter handle on it to like 2024. Is that part of the committee's goal, to somehow integrate what you're seeing at social services at the region with these numbers to just provide a more transparent and more up-to-date figures?
Through you, absolutely. And if we reflect back on the slide that speaks to the Niagara Region initiatives, there is a tracking mechanism behind the scene where actually, as the director of both social assistance and the director of the poverty reduction strategy, I work with economic development in understanding that potential disconnect that you're talking about, and understanding how we're reporting the number of living wage employers, the work that's happening across the community, and the attraction and the attraction and retention of employers and how that fits in to how we're measuring poverty across. Similar to what we would be doing with the work we do with Transit Commission, as well as in Children's Services as an example. I can share with you that when we look at, again, it's only a subset of individuals living in poverty on social assistance, but the number is large enough that it gives us a pretty good indication of what's happening in the community. When we look at population across the Niagara region, the percentage of people accessing either Ontario Disability or Ontario Works is about consistent in the percentage of population across the entire Niagara region. So we don't see one area significantly higher than the other. As the caseload increases, it's happening across all the municipalities. But certainly to your point, it's an area that we can continue to dig a little bit deeper. The census data is challenging, so it really would be the social assistance data that we could dig into a little bit more.
Yep.
One last question. You know, we've just sort of come out of budget, so it's a natural to use a comparator across Niagara and averages and medians to try and gauge that you're in line with what, you know, not just because others are charging that, but it's more the true cost. And I'd be interested in, you complimented us on our best practices, but there may be others out there that have some that are best practices that we don't have. Have you thought of sort of it's not to put us in competition with each other, but it is nice to see kind of what others are doing. So I don't know if you've given any thought to like the various examples out there, and I think we can measure ourselves as whether we tick the box across some of those.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Would you like a quick example?
Sure.
Okay, I'll give a shout out then. So a quick example would be an initiative that we have partnered with the City of Niagara Falls on. It received some media coverage, so I think it's okay to talk about. It's called the Level Up program. So we are working closely with the City of Niagara Falls in the creation of 2 jobs to assist individuals from working and exiting off of social assistance. We're providing some wraparound supports for those particular positions to those individuals, and the City of Niagara Falls has invested some money into that initiative in order to support individuals with exiting and moving out of poverty and social assistance. So it's an example of how sometimes it's an investment of millions of dollars, and sometimes it's an investment of our resources or a smaller amount of money with wraparound supports of existing. So that's just one example. So thank you for the opportunity to give that as an example.
Thank you. Councillor Baggio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, thanks, Laurie, for the presentation. It's quite enlightening. I'm going to plead ignorant on a lot of these things because I think our poor Colborne taxpayers, 60% goes to the region. We figure the region's taking care of the poverty because we think that's their job. That's why we're paying the region X amount of dollars. I guess everybody's responsibility, from municipality to region, Ontario government to federal government. I guess it's everybody's responsibility. And you did mention that you gave this presentation to the Social Determinants of Health Advisory Committee.
Correct.
I would like to see something come back from that committee, Mr. Mayor, making a recommendation that something we could do as a municipality. I don't know, the presentation, and it goes away, and then we don't talk about it anymore for another year. So I think you're on the committee, Mr. Mayor, if I'm not mistaken. But I'd just like to see somebody do something. Like, I know Park Cares is an agency that does some things for the region. Maybe it would be nice for Park Cares to come here and tell council, tell them, our area residents, what they actually do for the people on poverty. We know they have the food and all that stuff, but the other things they do, I think it'd be enlightening. I know they have building apartment building. I know the city has bought property for expansion of some more affordable housing. Is affordable housing poverty? I don't really know. Is it tied in, or is it one is different from the other one? Because if somebody's in poverty, do we expect them to own a house? I don't know. People say, well, you own a house, you can't be in poverty. So I don't know what the real definition is, and I would like to be enlightened, Mr. Mayor, some more, and I think it's an education for everybody, Mr. Mayor, so I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hoyle does sit on social determinants of health. We have our chair here this evening. Thank you, Lori, for attending, and quite frankly, that committee does send quite a bit of information to the city, and we're working on a number of issues right now with that committee. So may I suggest, Councillor, the next meeting, maybe come on out, can see the actual committee in action. It really gives you a good meat and potatoes idea of what they do and what they can bring forward, and the number of things that they're actually working on. A number of things get done through agencies that are part of that committee. Other things do come to us from time to time. So yeah, it's a evolving, very hard-working committee that has a lot of balls in the air that they're juggling, believe me, on a lot of issues.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll take that as an invite.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none. Lori, again, thank you and your team for coming this evening and giving this this presentation. And I know with Lori's committee, it was well received there also. So again, we look forward to having you back again, maybe with some updates and some good news with regards to how this program is moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so if I could have Councillors Bagu and Aquilina move that the presentation on poverty reduction strategy from the Niagara region be received. Further questions? All in favor? That's carried. We do have two delegations this evening. One is a written delegation for the Niagara Home Builders Association, which is part of your package. Also, we have Melissa Bigford, which has given us a written presentation. Melissa said she was coming tonight. I don't see her in the crowd. But she has given us her written delegation. So I'll move on to the mayor's report. So it's great to be back with everyone after a wonderful trip to Japan to showcase Port Colborne to partners on the other side of the world, but more on that a little later. I'll begin by sharing that I will receive the first official poppy on Thursday, October the 24th from the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 56 to mark the beginning of the annual poppy campaign. Every year, tens of millions of Canadians wear a poppy as a visual pledge to honor Canada's veterans and remember those who sacrificed for the freedoms we enjoy today. The poppy remains an enduring symbol of strength and remembrance. Residents are encouraged to support the poppy campaign once again this year. Donations collected during the campaign are held in trust at the branch level of the Royal Canadian Legion, and they directly support veterans and their families within the community to help ensure Canada never forgets. There will be a series of free, family-friendly movies being shown at the Valley Health and Wellness Centre once a month between now and April, hosted by the City of Port Colborne and the YMCA of Niagara. The movie screenings of favorites like The Mighty Ducks and Frozen will create a fun night for all ages. And the first event will be a screening of Hotel Transylvania on October the 26th. There will also be a number of free public skates sponsored by local partners between now and April at the Valley Health and Wellness Centre, with the next skate taking place on October the 27th. Both of these fantastic initiatives create an inviting space for residents and visitors to connect and enjoy shared experiences together. And of course, the main focus of the early part of the month for me was, and also the CAO, was our recent trip to Japan with CAO Louis and Paul Ferris, who is working for the mayor's office with regards to Asai Kasei and our relationship with Japan. So we arrived in Tokyo on October the 6th, and our meetings began at 9 a.m. the next morning when we were welcomed to the headquarters of the Japanese Shipowners Association. During our meeting, we gave updates on the Welland Canal and discussed opportunities related to local ship repair companies, as well as talking about the future development, waterfront properties for marine use, and the Ontario Marine Initiative. Later that day, we met with the Japan Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We gave them a presentation on Port Colborne, which outlined what's currently taking place here in the city, as well as new developments at Asai Kasei and Young Bunslauer. On October the 8th, we headed to Moriyama to meet with the city's mayor, his team, and their Department of Education. They were presenting to Niagara College regarding Japanese high school students studying in Niagara, as well as synergies between exchange students. We also presented to the mayor and his staff about Port Colborne and took part in a Q&A with Moriyama staff, the mayor, and his deputy mayor. In the afternoon, we gave a presentation on economic development to Asai Kasei engineering staff, along with our partners from the Niagara region. And then on October the 9th, we began our day early with a presentation from Asai Kasei about their Moriama plant before we received our tour of the facility. Now, the facility that they're going to build in Port Colborne, although is brand new, the facility that we toured in Moriama, we had to, depending on which section we went in, we had to wear special suits over our jeans and golf shirts that we had on. We had to wear special shoes that they provided with us. We had to wear helmets and goggles. You go through a doorway into a room, and it's a room that blows all the dust and everything off you, as well as it takes everything off the bottoms of your shoes, and then you exit that area and you're in the main facility where they produce their product. It's cleaner than anything I have ever been in my life. And every time you go through a door within those sections, there's actually these floor mats that your feet kind of stick to. And again, it takes off dust. They have all kinds of air exchangers, but you could literally eat your dinner off the floors of this place. I couldn't believe, even though Port Colborne's plant will be a longer assembly line, the size of this production from start to finish on this product, the number of cuts that's made into the product, how they reuse the waste in other products within their within the plant footprint. The plant that we're at is actually 3 plants in all, with 3 different types of products that Asai Kasei makes for world use. So the byproduct of the battery separator, all the cuttings and scraps, if you can call it, they're collected and they're sent to another part of a plant, which actually makes plastic utensils, plastic pails, that type of stuff from it. So they don't put anything to waste. When you're outside, you could barely hear anything. There was no odors. Beautiful, clean site. In fact, the site in Moriama, the footprint of the 3 plants that are there, although ours will be one large building, is the same size of property that they have in Port Colborne. So it just goes to show you how big this thing is. It's huge. Houses built right up to the fence line of people that live in Moriama. And as I said, we walked outside the plant to our vans that moved us around Moriama while we were there. You couldn't hear a thing. It's just a quiet type of operation, and that's over and above the operation that's coming to Port Colborne. These are 2 other operations they have there, and just totally clean. It was unbelievable. I don't know if you have anything to add for that, Scott. But
the rice paddies.
Yeah. So you want to? I'll let you jump in on that one.
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Council, it was my pleasure to attend along with Mayor Steele and Paul Ferris. The mayor didn't give me very much chance to recover from jet lag because we were on the run for the entire time we were there. And he did an excellent job selling Port Colborne to the various agencies that he described, including the Chamber of Commerce. We were on the 34th floor of a skyscraper in Japan overlooking the Emperor's Palace, and he had the lapel microphone and was presenting a slide deck and talked to many Canadian businesses that are already in Japan and Japanese businesses that are interested in North America. But the factory itself was the main reason for going in, as well as to be able to talk to some folks who are either in the supply chain for Asai Kasei and might also be interested in Port Colborne, and some employees of Asai Kasei who will be living in Port Colborne one day. And the factory, as the mayor said, literally houses are built. I know that one of the things that folks are worried about in Port Colborne is the impact of the operation on the local community. And as the mayor said, houses are built right up to the fence of the factory, and those houses aren't disrupted by odor or noise or any kind of operational output from the factory. But as we were prior to the tour, we were presented a slide deck about Asai Kasei's operations in Moriama, and they showed overhead photography, and they literally discharge their process water, the water that's used in the production of their products, into a stream on the plant that goes to the lake, the largest lake in all of Japan, largest freshwater lake, and rice paddies and farms are all along that stream, and so it's actually fitting in well with the agriculture and the residential and the industrial. And in the tour, there was 2 buses of us. There were some people from the region and from post-secondary institutions in Niagara. They pulled over on the side of the interior road of the factory, and we got out and we looked in what was sort of a water-filled ditch, and there were koi fish swimming in the clean water that was being discharged from the production. So it really was reassuring for the mayor and I to see that the impact of the operation on the local community and the residents and the environment is very, very, very small, if there's any impact at all.
Thanks, Scott. So back in Tokyo on October the 10th, we met with the Sai Kasei executives and a large number of their young staff to give a presentation done by myself and George Spezza from Niagara Economic Development. Our talk shared what life is like in Port Colborne and Niagara, including discussing physicians, dentists, and even where to get groceries. So within about 2 months of us sitting down with the first visitor from Japan for a Sai Kasei, we kind of spoke back in room 3 where we met about, kind of what they're looking for. And we immediately went out. We found a local physician, Dr. Vandenberg, local dentist, Dr. Bisley, and Kevin Eklund from Smoking Buddha with regards to, because Kevin worked in Japan for a number of years when he was going through to become a chef. So he has intimate knowledge of Japanese groceries, where to acquire true Japanese groceries in the Ontario market. So we did present that to them here, but we also presented it to them in Japan just to state that, look, we're looking out for you. We're a city that cares, and we can help you with your needs while you're here, whether you're coming over for 2 months or 2 years. So they were very surprised that we got this going so fast. So we talked about that both at as a city level and a Niagara regional level, how much we've brought together before they even put the shovels in the ground. So they were really happy about that. And then in that afternoon, we went to a meeting at the Canadian Embassy where we spoke with Minister Louis-Pierre Amand. He's not a government minister, but his title is minister. And he's the head of the Trade Commission in Japan for Canada, as well as another meeting with Christian Howes, the Consul Commercial of Ontario. He works for the Government of Ontario with regards to trade and his embassy staff. And each meeting included investment officers, and we discussed opportunities in Port Colborne and Niagara for Japanese companies. Coming out of that meeting, we were given the line on a couple of companies that are actually looking at moving to Eastern Canada, Central to Eastern Canada. We gave our presentation, we left information, we had these really great sticks with our presentation on it. They can just plug into their computer, they can kind of look at and see everything about Port Colborne and Niagara on that. So Mr. Long's department will be moving forward with talking with Christian Howes at the Ontario Trade Council in Japan with regards to these companies to see if we are a good fit. One of them actually, quite frankly, I don't know the name of them yet because that wasn't given to us. However, I do know the product and I do know the ingredients. And quite frankly, most of the ingredients that this company needs are made right here in Port Colborne. All you have to think of is ADM Milling and Young Bunzlauer. So I think it gives us a leg up when we start talking to these companies. So, that's right in the middle of the week, and we're already talking to companies that may be looking at investing in this area. Later that day, we spoke with special advisors to the governor of Tokyo, Suguchi Noburo, and his staff about trade between Tokyo and Port Colborne, Niagara. Mr. Noburo, he's the personal advisor to the governor. He's actually an employee of the government of Japan. But the governor of Tokyo is a very powerful woman within Japan. She was in the federal government one time, left that to become the governor. The governor of Japan would kind of be like Jim Bradley at the region. She's the governor of all of Tokyo and all the surrounding towns and cities within Tokyo. And just so you know, Tokyo is about the same size population as the country of Canada. There are about 40 million people. Just goes to show you one city in the world and how big they are. When we were at the top of some of these buildings in the office buildings, as far as you could see was city. It was unbelievable. And they don't have, like, if you go to Toronto, New York, Chicago, lots of really high buildings. They don't, and it's all to do with earthquakes. They're starting to see a little bit higher buildings as technology gets better in their engineering and building of things. So, but I just couldn't believe how big this city is. So talking with Mr. Naburo with regards to Tokyo itself and their commercial industrial area, he's very interested in both Niagara and Port Colborne, and also in the marine side of things, Tokyo Bay, which is, everybody knows about Tokyo Bay. It's one of the largest ports within Japan, if not the largest, and the marine industry that goes on there. So that tied back in with our conversations with the Ship Owners Association, which we gave him an overview of that meeting that we had. On October 11th, George Spetz and I gave a presentation to the Canadian Chamber of Commerce in Japan. As Scott mentioned, these are Canadian businesses that are there. The majority of the members are companies that deal in companies that are in Canada that are setting up in Japan, or Japanese companies that want to set up in Canada. And they do a lot of back and forth between those companies and Canada. So it was good to give them a presentation on what's going on here within Niagara. We also held a hot stove discussion. I mean, that's what I called it, because it reminds me of hockey, where you put the panelists up. It's like a hot stove on Saturday night. We had Prasad Pudagunta, who's the Vice President of Project Management for Asai Kasei, and Christian Howes from the Canadian Embassy. And this discussion was moderated by Carl Pires, who's a governor of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce in Japan. We received a lot of questions from the floor, from the representatives of their organization. I gave my presentation, George gave his with regards to the region, talked about incentives that we both actually have to offer, and really gave them the flavor of what's going on the ground here, what kind of development is going on here today, the types of companies that we have here, developable property that we have. We talked about the marine industry, we talked about the Welland Canal, and not just in Port Colborne. We did a whole Niagara region discussion on that. Then we traveled to Kanazawa on the Saturday and resumed our meetings Tuesday, October 15th, when we spoke with two vice mayors of Kanazawa, where we discussed basketball exchange programs. Niagara, and especially Port Colborne, has been doing a number of basketball exchanges for high school students for a number of years. Paul Ferris started that approximately, I got to think, almost 30 years ago. It kind of stopped during.
Went on it.
Well, that's right, Charlotte, you did go on that, didn't you? Into Kanazawa, correct?
No.
No, you didn't go to Kanazawa? Okay. One of the vice mayors, though, grew up with Paul when he was in high school there and university, and he played basketball with Paul when Paul attended high school in Kanazawa. So we talked about that and trying to resurrect that, because once COVID came, it really shut down. So we're kind of getting those talks going again, so that we can see our great basketball players from Niagara go over to Japan, learn all about Japan while they're there, but also having the Japanese teams come to not just Port Colborne, but Niagara in general. Because your teams were all Niagara-based kids. They weren't just Port Colborne-based kids. But when they were here, they came and lived at the houses, at the players' houses. So you stay with their families, they stay with our families, which is a good thing. So we talked about that. The other vice mayor, we talked about investments within Port Colborne. That's his duties with the mayor of Kanazawa. They do have a small port there. They have a cruise industry there, very similar to us. So we had some good synergies going in our conversation with that vice mayor and his staff. We talked about the types of businesses that they have, and again, they're small to medium size businesses like we have here with JTL Machine, Allied Marine, Oscom Steel, Thurston Machine, those type of companies. However, like our companies that ship worldwide, they do the same thing. So we talked about synergies there that we could maybe talk about, that if any of those companies want to come to Canada and maybe set up a subsidiary of their companies, Port Colborne and Niagara would be a great spot for them. So all in all, it was a phenomenal trip, and we were able to share about the great things going on here in Port Colborne, while quite frankly making lasting connections in Japan. As I mentioned, we've already given Mr. Long a long list of things to do with regards to companies in Japan. We are going to be reaching out to the municipalities that we spoke to and a number of the companies that we spoke to. I spoke today with Ian Hamilton from HOPA with regards to some things that HOPA wants to do in Niagara, and we brought information to the the Japanese Shipbuilders Association. They were very interested, so we're sending that information to Ian so that he can reach out, connect with them. We're going to be connecting with Ontario Shipyards and Allied Marine and giving them the contacts that we met with the Japanese Shipowners Association with regarding repairing Japanese-owned ships within the Welland Canal. One thing they don't do a lot of is stop here. They tend to take their ships overseas to get repaired, and we're telling them, look, we can do it here. We've got two great facilities at either end of the canal. Again, both Allied Marine and Ontario Shipyards, the former Heddle Marine at Port Weller at the dry docks. I'm not sure if they really knew about it or they kind of knew about it, maybe forgot about it because they're not using it. But they were surprised to hear that the dry docks are back into operation. So we discussed that with them and really laid it all on the table. So again, I think it was, it's a very worthwhile. And I think we've got a chance at maybe landing a company or two to come to the area with regards to investment, and actually, quite frankly, one of them maybe give a boost to current companies that are already here. So, anything to add?
I think through your worship to council, that's a very thorough recounting of the trip, so I don't know if I have very much to add, but I will say that Kanazawa, despite the fact that it's 800,000 people, where we're 20,000-ish, very, very similar to Port Colborne. We're on freshwater, they're on saltwater, but they have a large marine port. They also have a beginning of a cruise industry, so there were some things that were commonalities that we were able to speak to. The other thing is, while most of our visits were corporate, where we were visiting with companies or representatives of companies or the Ontario or Federal Trade Council, both of which were very helpful and supportive, we did visit 3 municipalities, including Tokyo. And just for council to put it in perspective, like the mayor did, our 9 folks on council are very small compared to there. They have 41 or 42 wards. They don't use the term wards. They have 127 councillors for the municipality of Tokyo. So that's quite a large council. They meet for 4 days at a time when they have their meetings, and it's actually called an assembly. They're assembly members. But the 2 trade councillors were very, very impressed that Port Colborne was successful in landing Asahi Kasei, and they said it was done very rapidly in terms of normal Japanese business practices. They said that doing business in Japan is much different than speed dating.
Yes.
And for them to basically be at the conditional building permit stage, which is about where they are now, and to have done all the work on the site they've already done from last summer, basically, is a very, very fast turnaround, and they were impressed by the team that Port Colborne and Niagara Region was able to put together to facilitate that investment. And that, I think, is a kudos to our staff who did such a good job of showcasing the city and the city's attributes.
Great, thanks. Any questions with regards to the mayor's report? Perfect. Council, under delegations, Melissa Bigford was going to speak. I see Melissa's here now. Okay with council to bring Melissa up to do her delegation? Okay. Melissa, do you want to come up?
I didn't know if you wanted me to do it now or if the item was pulled under staff.
No, it's under our delegations.
Okay, because I
yeah.
I didn't realize I was trying to request under, like, if it got pulled under staff, but that's fine. So sorry.
Yep, no problem. So just again, state your name and address, and then again,
Okay.
you've got 10 minutes.
Melissa Bigford Lofquist. I live at 173 Chippewa Road. I was basically wanting to speak on the staff report. It's 12.3B, 281 Chippewa. I had sent in a letter, but just wanted to make sure that with the detailed plans and reports will occur as part of the future draft plan or site plan control conditions, we are requesting council direct staff to bring the subsequent site plan and draft plan of condominium phase applications back to council for approval to ensure the concerns of residents are addressed. Considering many of the questions and concerns brought forward by the residents at the public meeting were responded with being dealt with in the future in the site plan and draft plan phases. If council does not bring this application back for approval, what guarantee will residents have that the issues and questions asked will be properly addressed and included as a condition of the site plan and draft plan phases? Again, I just wanted to mention that the fact that city's own traffic study reports show a much higher volume of traffic than the studies submitted by the developer. This increase in traffic is going to be greatly affect the safety of the surrounding neighborhood and cause an increase in accidents due to the large volume of cars entering and exiting the development. Line of sight on Chippewa Road is already a major issue for residents exiting and entering their own properties. I myself, who know the road, got hit backing out of my driveway because sometimes they come out of nowhere and you don't see them. Why has a Stage 3 archaeological site-specific assessment not been completed? It's been over a year and a half since the public meeting, and depending on the results of the Stage 3 assessment, a Stage 4 mitigation measures may be required. This requirement would significantly alter the design of the development, layout, everything. In conclusion, if council is going to recommend the zoning bylaw amendments and special provisions, I request that council direct staff to bring any future site plan and draft plan phases back to council for approval, ensuring the residents' concerns and unanswered questions as detailed in the report are addressed. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Any questions to the presenter? Great, thank you. Regional Councillor Davies isn't here this evening. Anybody have a regional councillor question or a regional question? Okay. So with regards to motions arising, if I could move in block, we have one that's asked been pulled. If I could move, or have moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Aquilina, that items 11.1 and 11.3 be approved and the recommendations contained therein be adopted. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. Item 11.2 was pulled. Committee of the Whole, Budget 2025, Proposed User Fees and Charges 2024-183. If I could have Councillors Bruno and Beauregard move that the Council approve the following recommendation from Committee of the Whole, that Corporate Services Department Report 2024-183 be received. The 2025 Proposed User Fees and Charges schedules attached as appendices A to P of Corporate Services Report 2024-183 be approved, that the draft bylaw attached as Appendix Q of the Corporate Services Report 2024-183 be brought forward to Council for consideration. Councillor Bruno would like to speak on this. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. You recall at the budget meeting, fees were a separate part of the whole overarching budget, and we did have some well-thought questions with respect to fees in the planning department. Having said that, we were concerned that time was of the essence, but it's now my understanding that because fee estimates from that department are just an estimate, because you don't know how many applications you're going to have in. So I think it would be appropriate to give it a more fulsome surgical look, whilst not holding back fees being implemented for Jan 1. So I'd like to support for bringing this back on the second meeting in November. By that time, we may have a handle on who's the point person in planning, and councillors could put forth recommendations, and perhaps in a report we could go through them, maybe not line by line, but suggestions to come through. So I'd like to, I don't know if it's refer
Yeah.
to the second meeting in November.
Okay, Councillor Beauregard, did you second that? So, Mr. Bowles, the referral part on the planning fees will come back to you, to come back to us, and allow, from the information you've sent out since our budget meeting, I know a number of councillors had some questions with regard to it. They just want to make sure that the fees we're charging are proper based on the 4 municipalities that are of equal size to us, and moving forward. So are you fine with that for the last meeting in November?
Yep. To you, yes.
Okay, that's what we want to hear. Councillor, there is no debate, but I can take direction. Councillor Beauregard.
Yeah, through your worship, and to also investigate the possibility of like major and minor applications, fees on some of the applications.
Okay. Mr. Schultz, you're fine with that? I know counselors will give you some direction on this and ask you a number of questions and to bring that back, so. Any other direction to staff with regards to these planning fees? Okay, all in favor? That's carried. Under the consent agenda, council, if I could have one of the counselors, actually, if I could have Councillor Aquilina, if you could, if we can move the Ontario Big City Mayors Solve the Crisis campaign regarding mental health, addictions, and homelessness, if we could pull that out and vote to support that as opposed to just receiving, is that okay? Okay, I'll come for a second or after that. But there are items, aside from item 12.4A, which is going to be brought out and brought in to items requiring separate discussion, are there any items under the consent agenda that need to be pulled? Okay, if I could have Councillors Bodner, oh, sorry, Councillor Aquilina?
Through you, Mayor, has anybody pulled like 12.3, the staff report?
Development charges.
And the recommendation report?
No, nobody's pulled those.
Nobody?
No, nobody's pulled them.
I would like to pull them, 'cause I have a few questions.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll take 12.3A and B, or
Yes, both.
A and B, okay. Okay. Anything else, council, on the consent agenda? If I could have Councillors Bodner and Baggio move that the council hereby approves the listed items, consent items on the October 22nd, 2024 agenda, that the consent items be approved on the recommendations as contained therein. And again, 12.3A, and 12.4A are removed to discuss under item 13. All those in favor? That's carried. Okay, so under development charges bylaw, recommendations that Chief Administrative Office Report 2024-191 be received, and that Council approve the City of Port Colborne development charges bylaw prepared by Watson and Associates, attached as Appendix A to this report. Councillor Aquilina, you have questions.
Okay, so I thought there was a delegation from the region regarding this as well. No?
Not that I know
It's a written delegation from the home builders.
Just, okay.
Oh, no, there was a delegation from the home builders. That was under delegations.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just a written. Yeah, they
Okay.
weren't here to speak.
So my question is that we were given a copy of that, but I thought that Upper Canada also submitted a letter. Are we being provided with that or no?
Mr. Schultz? Or, Mr. Long? Yep.
Through you, Your Worship, yes, Upper Canada Consultants did submit a letter to myself on September 27th in consultation with the city clerk. It was decided that the letter from the Niagara Home Builders Association would be included on the council agenda for information because that letter was addressed to the clerk. Then there was a follow-up email from the Niagara Home Builders Association, which you have with your addendum package, where the CEO says, let this be your sufficient notice to, as my request to put this letter on the agenda. So that's why the Home Builders Association emails and letters were included on the addendum, but not the Upper Canada Consulting letter.
My next question is, I couldn't find how long the bylaw will be in place for. Is it 5 years? Or?
Through the mayor to the councillor, well, generally, you would look at these every 5 years as a best practice. We did identify through the process that we may bring it to council to look at it earlier because the growth trajectory of the city is somewhat, I guess, undetermined on that time length, because we do know the industrial, and the mayor was talking about a lot of the industrial growth at the beginning of council. So if that rolls out ahead of plan or even on plan, it's very possible that the growth rates may exceed what we've identified. So there is the possibility to update this DC bylaw at an earlier date. I think in the DC bylaw, we said it's possible within the next 18 to 24 months even to come back and do an update, depending on how the industrial growth comes through.
No, go ahead.
You all done, Councilor? Oh, okay. Thanks.
Thank
Councilor Berto.
Councilor Aquilina. I'm not sure the gentleman at the back, is he from Watson?
Yep.
I'm just wondering if he's here and if there's an opportunity, as he created it, to maybe respond to councilors' questions as opposed to just maybe going to Mr. Long. And so I don't know if the consultant planner has anything to say from Watson.
Come on up.
Want to get our money's worth.
We charge your mileage from over there.
Welcome back.
Through your worship, just to supplement what Mr. Long and Mr. Boyle had mentioned earlier. So when we had presented this and through our discussions with city staff, there are a lot of moving parts, especially with your growth forecasts. So the way the Development Charges Act work is you can update the bylaw at any point in time. So if you do have any new information, new capital, new growth forecasts, it is prudent to update it in order to reflect the required revenues, as well as update the expenditures you'll be undertaking. However, with respect to the actual date of the expiry of the bylaw, to the councillor's question, it's a 10-year bylaw. So that is the expiry date of the bylaw. However, it can be opened up at any time, and as your staff had mentioned, we are looking at perhaps updating it within the next 18 to 24 months.
Okay. Anything further? Councillor Aquilina?
Okay. So the 10 years right now is just set at that 30,000 as opposed to like a gradual increase over the years?
Through your worship, great question. So as of right now, the way the bylaw is structured, it is the full rate that's being proposed. Now, you are allowed under the Development Charge Act to index that rate. Because as you know, when you're recovering these DC monies from new developments, new builds, the cost of infrastructure goes up over time. So to have a stagnant fee that essentially does not index is not reflective of what you are currently undertaking in terms of construction and paying for new vehicles, new equipment, etc. So there is a provision within the Act and is extended within your draft bylaw that allows for that amount to be indexed or inflated every year. And I just can't recall if it's at the anniversary date of the bylaw or January 1st. It's one of the two dates, but it is contained within the bylaw.
Councillor?
Thank you. And I have one more question. In the chart within the bylaw, there's multiple columns, but the last one says special care, special dwelling units. Would that be for like an application for a garage or an additional to like an already existing dwelling?
Great question. So the way the Development Charge Act reads, which again we've also included as part of the background study and bylaw, is that if there's any intensification within a residential unit, they are allowed to have, say up to 2 additional apartments without having to pay a DC. So you do have that availability through your existing residents to expand their homes, add 2 apartments, and not have to incur any fees. The special care special dwelling charge, that is specific for any types of units that may come to the city that, as defined within your bylaw, are meet that criteria. So this may be in the form of retirement homes or residential institutional dwellings that we charge on a per room basis, because essentially there's one person living in there, assisted living or some type of item. Now, there are certain types of institutionals that, again, as defined by the Act, is treated whether it's residential or non-residential. The way we've structured it is if you do have any retirement homes, again, some maybe like a Chartwell as an example, we wouldn't charge them a full apartment rate or the non-residential square footage, which appears to be on the calculated side much higher. So since there's only one individual living in that unit, it would be on a per bed or per bedroom basis.
Counselor? Sure.
Question. So for the applications that we already have in the queue, are they grandfathered at the old DC charge or at the time that they submit their building application, or like will they be charged the new DC charge?
Excellent question. Through your worship, it depends. So under the Development Charges Act and under your DC bylaw, if a development was able to provide the city with a site plan or zoning bylaw application, then their DC rates are frozen at the time of those applications being approved. So if you do have any right now or historically that have submitted those types of applications, then whatever the DC rate at the time, as long as that's documented with staff and the city and as well as these developments, then they would be extended the current rates that are currently in effect up to a period of 2 years. So they have to pull a building permit within 2 years, and then they would be provided the current DC rates that you impose as of today. Now, if they miss that deadline and they're now at 2 years plus 1 day, then the building permits and the development charges that would apply would be what would be prevailing at that time. Similarly, if there's no, and if these applications are not around and they haven't been submitted to the city, then as they pull a building permit, it would be whatever the current DC rates of that day. So if they pull a building permit, say next week, and your bylaws in effect, then it would be the charges as per the Schedule B within your development charge bylaw.
Counselor?
Oh, I'm good, thank you.
Good, thanks. Counselor Bodnar?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to pick up on what Counselor Agolina was asking at first, whether there will be some revisit this before the 10 years. And we heard staff say it could be 18 months, could be 24 months. Can we put in there or ask that staff come before council no later than 24 months with a report telling us what's going on? Just so it doesn't slip by. Somewhere they could say that everything's okay and nothing's going on, but at least there's something in there that says, a date rather than just, not that staff wouldn't come forward, but, just to say that no later than 24 months, staff will come forward and say whether we got to revisit it or not. Can we do that?
Yes, you can.
I'd like that done.
You want to put an amendment in there that we add that to the recommendation that I read?
I would.
Do I have a seconder for that? Counselor Hoyle? This is on the amendment. Any questions to the amendment that have come back to us, at least a report from staff in 24 months on status? No questions? Everybody set with that then? All in favor of the amendment? That's carried. Just so we note, Councilor Borgard does have a conflict on this, so he's not voting on this. Anything else, council? Yeah, Councillor Aquilina.
Sorry, I forgot. Is it possible, I know the report's already been published, but is it possible to get a copy of the Upper Canada letter to council?
Yeah, I believe it was included in the last go-around that we had when Byron was here. There was some, I don't know. Not sure if it had the whole verbiage in there, but I know it was talked about that Upper Canada did submit something. So can you just send that out to the council?
Yeah, staff would be pleased to provide that, that letter that we received from UCC as well as the city response that was provided.
Yeah.
We'll share that.
Yeah, no problem. I thought it was included the last time because I remember seeing UCC's name in there that they did send us something. But anyways, we'll get it out to make sure that you do have it. Okay. Any further questions? So I had councillors Aquilina and Bruno moving the recommendation, so it's now as amended. Seeing no further questions, all in favor? That's carried. Again, noting Councillor Beauregard's conflict. Yeah, you can go down there. Thanks.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, next up is item 12.3B. The recommendation is that Development and Government Relations Department Planning Division Report 2024-192 be received, that the zoning bylaw amendment attached as Appendix A of Planning Division Report 2024-192 be approved, and that the city clerk be directed to issue the notice of passing in accordance with the Planning Act. Councillor Aquilina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very surprised I'm the one doing all the talking tonight. That's not usually how this goes, but I do have some concerns in regards to traffic on Chippewa Road. I had the pleasure of meeting Roseanne Shields, who lives across from the proposed development, and we walked, I think it was on a Sunday morning, which you would think is probably lighter traffic than during work days, but they're turning from Highway 140 onto Chippewa Road at a very high clip of speed, as well as coming down Chippewa Road to get onto the 140. So I'm a little concerned that the only access point is one, and it's going to be right along the one home that's right there. And I believe the report was indicating that the road is city owned, so it would be up to the city to make mitigating measures to kind of alleviate traffic or accidents that are going to happen. And I was just wondering if we know what those are, or if those are coming at a later date.
Mr. Schultz?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Aquilina. The applicant's traffic report that was submitted didn't indicate that any mitigation measures were required at this time for the development. But as Chippewa Road, as council's aware, I know our public works staff have, and maybe Steve can chime in as well, they have looked at Chippewa Road as, ways we can look at mitigating traffic on there, ways to slow down vehicles. So I don't know if there's any other plans in the works currently for other mitigation measures that the city could implement on Chippewa Road to help impact or to help mitigate that. But that is an option that is available if the city desires.
Anything to add, Mr. Szapowski?
The only thing would be able to, through your worship, I'm just looking through some past reports, because the intersection has been, I know it's been studied in the past. There was some traffic mitigation efforts that were actually on the road too, which are delineators in the roadway, similar to what we've implemented just this year on Empire Road. So we have implemented that. We could do some traffic studies on there, but I know the consultant has, and they provide a traffic overall plan. But we would just basically go by the consultant's recommendations at this time. If council did want to do some further studying, we could do that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to David. Do we have any idea of how long like the remaining studies are going to take to be completed? Like the archaeological and...
So that was one of the region's comments, was that, you know, the studies that were submitted for stage 1 and 2 archaeological indicate that a stage 3 was required. So the region has identified that as a condition of future draft plan approval or site plan approval, whichever direction it tends to go, those can be addressed through that process. So I'm not sure of the timing of their future submissions for draft plan of condo or site plan, but it would really be up to the consultant to determine the timing of that, and also the landowner for how fast they want to move on the property.
Councillor?
Okay.
You're fine?
Yep.
Councillor Bagu?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions. First about the traffic and that. I know our Director of Public Works comes into that direction to work every day, and if he would turn right off the 140 onto Chippewa Road, he would notice that the no truck sign is visible to the driver once he's already started his turn, rather than before he starts his turn. So maybe the city could look at that. Something like we did on 58 and Barrack Road. We put the no truck sign turning on actual Highway 58 rather than on Barrack Road. So take a look at that, and that might help. The Sobeys trucks come in on Sunday morning. I know they go down there because their Google thing tells them to. The other thing to you, Mr. Mayor, to I guess to David, there's some questions about site plans coming back to council for approval. That's not something normally we do, if I'm not mistaken.
Mr. Schultz?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. For site plan control applications, the province, I believe 2 years ago now, implemented a provision that site plan applications have to be delegated to staff and they cannot be brought to council. So there's that. But with respect to draft plan of condominium, those ones are subject to council approval still. So those, if that application does come in, which the way the site is laid out currently, it would have to come in as a condominium. That would come to council for approval, which could be subject to public consultation at that time as well. That we can definitely make sure of.
Councillor?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. You say could, but would it?
So through the mayor, if that's council's direction, we can definitely hold a public meeting for draft plan of condominiums and subdivisions alone. They do not require formal public meetings, but we can still have one if that's council's direction.
To you, Mr. Mayor, could I make an amendment to have that done?
Yep. So you want to amend that if it's a condominium, plan of condominium, that it'll come back to council, both with a public meeting and then to a full council meeting?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, seconder, Councillor Hoyle. Discussion on the amendment? All in favor? That's carried. Okay, so there's a motion as amended. Questions I had, anything else, Councillor Bagu?
No, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. And just picking up on what Councillor beg you in the motion we just passed, if this goes through tonight, the zoning bylaw amendment, can they change it from condominium to just a regular plan of subdivision, that it doesn't have to come back for site plan?
Schultz?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, a draft plan of subdivision is treated the exact same way as a condominium, so it's the same process. So if council directs that a public meeting wants to be held, we can take that in and make sure that happens.
Okay, just wanted to make sure and just a couple quick other questions. Somebody brings in an application, plan of subdivision, that doesn't meet the provincial standard for density. They still allowed to build?
Schultz?
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, I know there's been some provincial changes with that. So with greenfield densities, there's recent changes have come in that have actually removed those density targets from greenfield lands in certain aspects. If they do not meet that density target, they could still be permitted to build. It's a greenfield density target that's across the entire municipality. So, for example, a subdivision on one side of the city provides 100 units per hectare, and the other one provides 25 units per hectare. It's the average, and as long as the average meets that 50 people in jobs per hectare, it could still be permitted and still meet the intent of the policy.
Okay. And the reason I asked, this is through you, Mayor, to David, and I hate to use these terms, but it seems like all of our standards that we look for in property size, setbacks, all of those things are thrown out, and this whole plan is squished together to meet the density target. And it says in the report that it just makes the density. And the only reason it does that is because all of the setbacks and all the lot sizes and everything have been reduced to squeeze it all together to fit it into this little tiny property. And I just wondered if there was a measurement that they took, the proponents, how many units were there if all of our regulations that we had in place were adhered to, lot size, setbacks, everything like that. How many units could you put on that piece of property if they didn't come, well, the zoning bylaw amendment would stand, but the reduction in side yard setback, front yard setback, lot area, lot coverage, all of that. If none of that took place, how many units would they be able to put on the property? Was that ever taken into account?
Mr. Schultz?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can't really comment on if they looked at that when they submitted, and I don't have that number in front of me, unfortunately, of what could potentially be there if everything was, by the book adhered to. But I think what I would say to that is, they're, as the report mentions, they're barely meeting the density requirements in our official plan currently, and that's with amending the zoning bylaw to make that density target. So I think that kind of raises a bigger concern from my perspective, is that, our official plan and zoning bylaw are not jiving. Like really at the end of the day, the intention is not to have people coming in for all these amendments to our plans, but in the current situation right now, we see this a lot, because in order to meet certain policies of the official plan, we have to amend the zoning bylaw, and sometimes vice versa. So definitely it's something staff are looking at through our OP update, and we'll follow in the future for the zoning update as well.
Okay. Just last question, Mayor, or comment, because that was going to be my next question. When has a plan come before us that didn't have all the requests for side yard setbacks and front yard setback and lot size and everything? It just seems that every single development that's come before us lately is asking for all of these adjustments. And it's like, why do we have requirements that everybody changes, right? And it's like to fit things in, to meet the density targets and things like that. And it's like, that just prolongs the development because it all has to come back. So you're right, if we could get everything to agree on paper, maybe it would speed up development in the city, so.
That's definitely what they're doing right now.
Just to add to that, to be fair, I think council does end up seeing the ones that are looking to amend the plans. The ones that are coming in and meeting everything in the zoning bylaw, et cetera, those just proceed to either site plan approval or building permit, so council doesn't see those. So in a lot of cases, it's council is seeing the ones that are looking for the amendments.
So we do have, sorry, Mr. Mayor, through you. So we do have plans that come that what we don't see, that everything is just as asked by us, and developers just follow through with that.
Through the mayor, it does happen, yes. Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks.
So hopefully when planning staff's finished updating our zoning bylaws and all that stuff, everything will jive. Because now it's outdated, right? That's why, yeah, so. I had Councillor Hoyle next.
To the mayor, Councilor Begu actually gave my question. My biggest thing is that I think we're at this stage that where, Steve, I would like to see your department explore more calming measures on that street. It's always coming back. We got to find a better way of reducing the speed that comes off that highway as much as possible. And I would like to direct staff to look at it in a little more detail, please.
Yes, through you, your worship. So staff can take that approach and we can do some studying out there to see what alternatives there are and move forward with that.
Okay, Councillor? Thanks. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, worship. I'm not sure who to direct this to because it involves development charges. So you'll recall when Coronation Drive was up in front of council and there was concerns by the residents to have a traffic study. And there was one done, but the concern I had and the residents had was that it included the development in front of us, but it didn't include the fact that across the road, this is Coronation West Side Road, which is a provincial highway, that an apartment building had already been approved months earlier, and that now there's another one coming or development there, which is greatly going to increase that traffic. At the time I asked about it, and I was told that there is, and so maybe one of the two or three of you can help me with this, there was some kind of DC charge that would come out of those developments that had to do with it either being, in this case it was on a provincial highway, but that it would allow the city to use funds to pay for a better situation, because the MTO was only commenting on what was before us. Now, they should have had regard to one that was not in the queue, but one that was approved. Now there's another one coming. I make this comment because at Chippewa Road, the development goes forward, the traffic plan stands, and then you find out later real life takes effect. And real life takes effect and it doesn't work. And then there's a cost involved, and the developer's been approved, the development's been approved, that's all gone, and it falls on our lap, particularly in this case because it's a city road. So I guess what you can't do through the traffic study, maybe you can do through city funds, but obviously one doesn't want it to have everybody in the city paying for it, because we all know growth's supposed to pay for growth. Is there access to, and maybe for the help of the residents you can bring it back, but I don't know if you recall this conversation about, and maybe Scott does, because it was, CAO does, because it was in that discussion about the residents there at Coronation saying, yeah, you're looking at this in isolation, two more come around, and all of a sudden now it needs a light, or it needs taken care of. So maybe if it doesn't come through the traffic study because it's looked at as being okay, but reality sets in, is there that fund available for things to be attended to if we can't do it now at the front door?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think I recall having that conversation with you about that specific scenario. And when there are multiple studies involved, like in that case, it was the MTO, and they have a threshold that, you know, a certain number of traffic counts. Once it meets that threshold, that a traffic signal is required. So I don't think, and Mr. Bowles can comment on this as well, I don't think the traffic lights were something that were included in our recent DC study. So if they're not, the responsibility is on the developer to implement those when that threshold is met. And when there are multiple developments, there could be, you know, 2 could be permitted without meeting that threshold and not having the requirement for the light, but the third one comes in and then all of a sudden they're above that. That's when the light's required. So in that case, it would have to be the property owners working together to cost share on that. I don't believe the city would be the one funding that.
Yep, go ahead.
The problem with that is the developer's gone. So, you know, development 1 comes through, all the fees are paid, the houses are started building, and so, yeah, it's like the hydro pole, right? The next business that goes on there needs a new transformer. Well, 4 people got it 4/5 of the way. The 5th guy is stuck with the bill. So if we didn't include it in that coverage, I'm sure we got the answer through Sullivan Manny or someone that there's a specific DC charge that would look at future. Now, I don't know if it was because this was on a provincial highway, and so there wasn't, they wouldn't contribute to it, that's how we would garner the money. So I don't know if Mr. Louie can add to that, or maybe we can find out and amend it, so at least if it doesn't work, we've preset ourselves up to have dollars there to make it work, and it's not a come beg for the dollars out of the city's general revenue fund, but there's DC that could help, and there's certainly a number of DC charges here that could actually fix a problem if it happens later.
Okay.
Mr. Louie, did you want to?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Bruno, I recall the conversation as well as Mr. Schultz is saying, but I don't have the details in my notes here or in my past emails. So I think that's going to be the best way to proceed. I foresee the same problem that you've identified, which is if you say that a developer today is going to be responsible at some future point for a portion of costs of what is going to become a city asset, that developer may have already constructed the development and moved on. So effectively collecting that owed amount is going to be problematic. So let me go back to Sullivan Manny, see if we can get that. We can either bring it as a report to the next council meeting, which I unfortunately won't be at, David Schultz. Maybe you can do the report, or I'd like to see it in the public eye rather than an email to council, so that the people who have interest in the development you mentioned, as well as the one that's before council today, can see what the result of the discussion was. So I'm going to ask for 2 weeks on that, or I guess it's 3 weeks on that, next council meeting.
That would be great, because I think there is that third application coming on West Side Road coming to a public meeting, and I'm sure somebody's going to ask, well, now that you've got the third development in here, is there going to be a light?
Yeah. Right. So that just only needs to come back for information purposes, report? You don't have to have recommendations in it. Okay.
Yeah.
Staff or council
We can
put that together?
On that, yeah.
Okay. All right. Further questions? Councillor Borgard.
Yes, through your worship, Ms. Bigford did make a comment about the traffic study and how our traffic study was different than what the consultant traffic study said in terms of counts. And I'm just wondering if you can speak to the difference in the studies and the results.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't have the report in front of me, and I am relying on our engineering reviewers for their comments and recommendations on this as well. So we can take a look at that and, you know, ensure when it does come back for a subdivision that or condominium that you know, everything looks good. I don't really have anything further to comment on the changes at this point or the differences, unfortunately.
Counselor? It can come back, so that's fine. Yeah. All right. Counselor Aquilina?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry, I forgot one question through David, or to David. Do we have any idea of when the crusher in pit 1 is moving to another pit?
For you, Mr. Mayor, from my best recollection, it was within a 5-year time frame, is what I heard last.
Okay. Further questions? So if I could have Councillors Hoyle and Beauregard move the recommendation as amended. Further questions? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Yeah. Okay, this is the correspondence from the Ontario Big City Mayors Solve the Crisis campaign regarding mental health, addictions, and homelessness. I've asked council to support this as opposed to just receiving. If I could have Councillors Aquilina and Beauregard move that. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. Okay. That's it for those, right? Okay, no motions this evening? Any notices of motion? Okay. Staff remarks. Madam Clerk, any remarks this evening?
I do, just one item this evening. The Clerk's Division is currently conducting recruitment and accepting applications for positions on the Port Colborne Library Board, the Museum, Culture and Heritage Board, Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee, and the Economic Development Advisory Committee. Applications will be received by email, regular mail, or in person on the second floor at City Hall up to and including this upcoming Friday, October 25th, 2024. The application form can be found on the city's committees and boards webpage. And joining a board and committee is a great way to get involved, offer your voice and your valued skills to strengthen our shared sense of community. So we encourage our residents to apply by the deadline.
Great. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Shapowski, nothing to add? Mr. Bowles?
Just two quick comments. One is just for the rate budget. We'll have that posted in about 2 weeks, sometime between the 6th and the 8th, for residents and council to start looking at. And just a reminder, you did a great, Mayor, you did a great update on the movies that are going to happen at the gym, but just a reminder, and I don't know if you got it out there, but it is also a food drive event too. So we are partnering with Port Cares, so if people can bring some items, that would be fantastic.
Good, thanks, Mr. Bowles. Mr. Schultz, anything in planning?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we just have a public meeting coming up on November 5th for 3 planning applications, one of which I have a conflict on, but the other 2 are quite fairly minor. So just putting that out there.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Long?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to congratulate David Schultz on being appointed the city's new manager of planning. Also wanted to inform council that Craig Larmer, who I think council is familiar with, is also assisting planning staff a couple days a week on applications and development files. So great to have the expertise and capacity, and great to have David aboard as manager.
Great, thank you. CAO.
I just wanted to, through your worship, it's already been approved or received for information. I'd like to draw council's attention to correspondence item 12.4C, which is from the Association of Road Supervisors, commending Ian Roberts, our Public Works Road Superintendent, for obtaining his certified road supervisor certificate. And I'm sure that he's very proud of himself, and I know we're proud of him too. It's a little bit bittersweet because Ian is a really good worker, a really hard worker, a really smart individual. He started in about 2018, quickly rose up to be a superintendent in our organization, but has recently announced that he's accepted in a position at another municipality in Niagara. So we're very, it's always sad when that happens because we're losing one of our people, one of our colleagues that we work with as staff and that council works with, but it's always nice to see people grow and pursue their sort of career aspirations. And Ian is a good one, and we're sorry to see him go, but congratulations to him for the Certified Road Supervisor certification.
Great. Any other staff updates? Oh, okay. Councilors' remarks. Councilor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one. We will be holding a Remembrance Day ceremony November 11th at Centennial Park, Cedar Bay. Been doing that for a lot of years, and it'll continue this year too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Hoyle.
Thanks staff for handling all my stuff that came in last minute on the weekend when I was walking the dog. The other thing is that the environmental committee has a presentation at the Port Colborne Library, residential electrification from 6:30 to 7:30, and that's October 28th. Sorry.
Thank you. Councilor Danch.
Just one note there, residents on Borden Avenue and Omer getting a little fed up with the dirt bikes and four-wheelers heading out to what I call the Robin Hood. I rode a bike since I was 12 years old, and if you want to tick off your neighbors, I guess that's the way to do it. I really would appreciate if maybe the mums and dads over there could relay to their kids to slow down on the machines. I don't know if police presence is the problem because they're not going to chase the kids, and if they would just maybe slow down because I've had numerous complaints, and all I can do is ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things for Public Works. Steve, I should have given you a heads up. Got an update on Homewood water main. I just noticed today that all of a sudden they're really, really close to getting down to clearance, and it seems to have gone quicker than what they expected, or about on schedule, because I can't believe how fast they're progressing. So just that and one other thing.
Through you, Your Worship. So although it looks like they're moving really fast, what they've done is they've started with the installation of water main throughout the road. They'll still have to go back and do services next. So the work isn't quite completed yet on Homewood, but the first phase or portion of it has been, as the water main has been installed within the roadway.
Okay, just because they moved really quick in the last couple of days, and I was surprised to see them down there. So, and just congratulations on the road work on King Street out in front of the Belmont. I had a chance to drive down it today, and the whole project turned out really, really good. You don't even notice that the road is a little bit different, but it's really nice and smooth, and I like the way that it meets with the curb and then the steps and everything. Great job, and let Matt know he did really good. So I'm expecting the same when maybe some of the other sidewalks in the area get replaced. So keep up the good work. Thanks.
Just on that, and I did mention this during budget a week ago. That was a good partnership between the ownership of the Belmont Hotel and Steve and his staff. They've been working on that since last fall with regards to that project, because he wanted to do some work with regards to his coal shoots. Pardon? Coal shoots. Yeah, his coal shoots, delivery shoots. So they actually eliminated two, and then he did a brand new one for the one that was probably there for 100 years. So great job on, as you said, for staff in that partnership. So thank you. Councilor Bruno.
Nothing tonight.
Thank you. Councilor Baggio.
I'll fill in for Councilor Bruno, Mr. Mayor, no problem. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to say nothing more about you. I've had a couple complaints, Mr. Mayor, about speeding again. And I notice when I drive around, I see the OPPs doing their radar in gas line on the 140. It's at 58, but I never see Niagara Regional Police doing radar anywhere. Maybe they do it when I'm not driving around, but it seems like we need for them to show up a little bit where they can be seen. And I don't care if they park in the middle of the road, stop the speeders, but at least let the people know they're out there. Because right now, nobody sees them anymore. So maybe if you, the CAO, have your meeting with the police sarge, we can bring it up for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, they are out there, believe me. I sit on the Police Services Board. Our traffic unit is in town. Our constables that are stationed here are out. Again, you may not see them. Sometimes it's better that you don't see them so that those that are speeding can get caught. Is there specific streets that you're getting complaints on?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Sugarloaf is really bad. And I had one phone call where somebody was speeding and a resident was walking down the sidewalk with a phone in their hand. And I looked up and looked at the speeding car, and the driver in the car turned around and came back and thought he was taking a picture of his car speeding and sort of threatened the person. So I think that's incentive enough for our NRP to show up a little bit more, Mr. Mayor. So
West end of Sugarloaf or east end?
Landonville.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. My next issue, Mr. Mayor, I guess it goes to Steve. Just a question. I've had a call from a couple of residents when the sanitary sewers were flushed by a contractor. It seems like some of their toilets are not flushing as well as they were before the city was contracting out the flushing. I did contact Public Works, and they say sometimes what happens is it takes a month or two for the buildup to go out. And one resident just hired a plumber to clean their line themselves rather than wait a month or two. But I just want to know, is that normal? Is this on towards the west end of Stanley Street? Not at the end, but...
Mr. Shapowski?
Through your worship. So what I wouldn't mind doing is actually getting the addresses so that we can actually do some investigation just to make sure there isn't a further issue that was caused or that's there currently. So if you're okay with that, I'd like to take those addresses and just work through the system to be able to make sure that there's not an issue with them.
No problem, through you, Mr. Mayor. We'll touch bases this week. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Borgard?
I would just like to send my congratulations to David on his promotion. So, thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Aquilina?
I would request to the CAO and mayor if I could be provided with an update on the Sun Retreats meeting that took place with EMS and we provided some information on that.
Okay. Perfect. I was just making notes. No procedural motions this evening. Bylaws. We have to pull bylaw 19.2 with regards to the conflict. Oh, so 19.1 does not come forward this evening because we referred that. So on 19.2, with regards to Councillor Beauregard's conflict, if I could have Councillor Bodmer and Hoyle move the development charges bylaw. Questions? All in favor? That's carried. And 19.3 and 19.4, if I could have Councillors Bagu and Danch move those two bylaws. Questions? All in favor? Those are carried. We are moving into closed session this evening, Council. It's moved by Councillor Aquilina and Councillor Bruno that Council now proceed to meet in closed session under Section 2392D of the Municipal Act 2001, where a closed meeting is held if the subject matter being considered is labor relations or employee negotiations. Section 2392F of the Municipal Act 2001, where a closed meeting is held if the subject matter being considered is advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Sections 239B of the Municipal Act 2001, where a closed meeting is held if the subject matter being considered are personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal board employees. Questions? All in favor? Carried. So this ends the open session of council this evening. Thank you for those that attended and those that watched on WeeStream. We'll see you next meeting.